Brian Oliver presents Haunting Tales of Madness!
Bad Times in the Tiny Home. Written by Brian Oliver. Narrated by Varg Papa. Chapter 1. February 7th, 2017. Then and There. Tiny homes. Everyone seems to want one these days. They are the new fad, after all. For many people, they are nearly perfect. I was nervous about moving into one, but all of the neighbors seemed like great people. I was glad that the house came with a hitch, because only a month after moving in, I was out of work and having to travel to find a better gig. I drove from Maine down the coast, and then, once finding no luck as far down as North Carolina, I headed west. The easy part was not having to pay for hotels, and there were several stations that allowed me to hook up for the night. And I did have my generator on the back of the house for power when needed. I still had some money, but anytime a business owner would let me work for my keep, I took them up on the offer. I'm not ashamed to admit that I have washed a lot of dishes and performed a handful of favors for a hot meal. I finally found myself in a small town along the border of Colorado and Utah. They had a mobile home and RV park there that seemed to serve as its own little community. I had pulled up to a small diner with a decent parking lot when I met the owner of the park. Her name was Hillary, and she was the kind of woman who knew hard work, but still had a delicate look to her. It didn't hurt that when I met her, she was wearing Daisy Dukes. She could tell I was on hard times and said as long as I pulled my weight that I could have a spot. She also said if I didn't, she would make sure I hit the road hard enough that it hit back. The RV park was called Shady Glades, and it lived up to its name. There were plenty of trees, and it was pretty easy to stay cool in the warmer evenings. Hillary introduced me to Mick. He was sort of the mayor of our little RV and tiny hometown. Mick loved to talk, and he loved to drink his beer. Not sure which he loved more. As a welcome gift, he brought me a small charcoal grill, and to be quite honest, I was grateful to have it. I was also grateful for the company, even if he did talk a mile a minute. He was an old war vet, and loved to tell the same stories over and over. He would bring over a beer and some brats, and I would light up the grill, and share whatever cigarettes I had. One night, we were joined by his neighbors on the other side of his camper. Their names were Glenn and Raven. I felt like Raven kept giving me eyes, and it was hard to avoid her glances. I think Glenn noticed once or twice, but he seemed unbothered. We fixed up some pork chops and bacon-wrapped shrimp, and then Glenn revealed a cooler full of tropical mixed drinks. They were pre-made, of course. Raven walked over to me and handed me a pina colada. As she did so, she asked me for a tour of my tiny home. I shrugged and showed her in. There wasn't much of a tour to give. Tiny houses very much fit their name. She ran a finger along the small counter as I kind of shrugged at the kitchen, living, and dining areas. She gave a small giggle and pointed to the small set of stairs that led to the loft sleeping area. "What's up there?" she said. "Oh, up there? That's my bed. Nothing much to show you up there." "Are you sure?" She was suddenly very close, and her right hand made its way down towards my zipper. "Whoa, I'm flattered, but your husband is right outside, and we just met." I tried very carefully not to offend her. She didn't move away, and I saw a sparkle in her eyes that was very bewitching. She giggled and bit her lower lip. I felt myself getting a strange sense of tunnel vision as she pulled me in for a kiss. I woke up in a cold sweat. I reached over and looked at my phone to check the time. It was 3 a.m. I was in my bed, buck naked, and I had no idea how I got here. I was so thirsty that my tongue felt like it might crack and crumble if I didn't get it some water. I sat at my tiny table drinking a large glass of ice water and hoping these odd flashes that kept coming in my head would go away. It was like having memories and dreams confused with each other. Flashes of Raven kissing me, flashes of her body, flashes of being with her in my bed, flashes of blood, laughing, and then came sharp pain in my neck. I fixed the second glass of water and then went to the bathroom to wash my face and get some cold water on my forehead. I was burning up and needed relief. My mind went cold as I looked in the mirror. I was covered in scratches and marks. I winced as the pain in my neck continued. I looked and saw the bite marks, the marks which pierced my skin. My skin felt hot and sticky. My eyes were bloodshot. I felt a terrible urge and ran outside to retch. I guess I was a bit loud, as Hillary heard me and came to check on me. I know I was shaking only because she mentioned it. I started to feel chill and clammy. Hillary took me to her trailer, which was like a mansion compared to my tiny house. She laid me on her couch with a look of concern and got me a cold compress. I thanked her, and she lit a smoke, then sat in front of me on her small wooden coffee table. "What happened to you? You look like you got in a fight with a mountain lion and lost." "I don't know. Mick invited Glenn and Raven over for food and booze, and then it's all blurry. I think Raven came inside the house." "That's not possible. How do you even know about Glenn and Raven?" "What do you mean? They live on the other side of Mick." "Okay, who is Mick to you?" "Mick, my neighbor on the right side of my tiny house, and then on his right side is Glenn and Raven." "Okay, I don't know how you got their names, and I don't have time to play around here. But you just described 3 people who have not lived in the park for almost 2 years." "What? That isn't possible." I stood up and opened Hillary's front door. I pointed to my house and then choked on my own breath. Both spots were empty. They appeared to have been empty for some time. I looked back at Hillary with fear and terror in my eyes. She had me sit back down and lit herself another cigarette. Now I was shaking, not from being chilled, but from shock. Hillary looked very upset. There was a man named Mick who used to live here, and he was neighbors with a couple of lunatics named Glenn and Raven. She took a long drag of her cigarette and blew out a plume of smoke while talking. "They were here for about 4 years before things went bad." "How bad?" "Bad enough that all 3 of them ended up dead. Raven was a bit of a wild card and could never keep her legs closed. She loved to make Glenn jealous, and it was almost like a game for them. I guess it went really bad when Mick caught feelings for Raven, more feelings than she was really looking for." "Shit, so Glenn got too jealous and killed them all? Like murder-suicide?" "Not quite. It was Mick. Mick had been Raven's plaything for a while, and he started to resent her going back home to Glenn." "How did that lead to what had happened?" "Mick lost his shit. Stabbed Glenn in the face with a kitchen knife. He didn't think Raven was home. When she walked in on him and started screaming, he turned around and tried to get her to stop. At this point, most of the park could hear the commotion. I ran out just in time to see Raven walk out of the trailer. Her neck had been cut. After about 3 steps, she fell dead. Mick was inside screaming incoherently. The cops arrived and tried to talk Mick out of the trailer, but I think when things set in, Mick just couldn't take it. They found him dead inside, cut his own throat." I sat in stunned silence as Hillary spoke to me about the situation. She had the trailers removed to keep the bad energy out, as she called it. I took it upon myself to call the priest. I also called a shaman and a friend of Hillary's who studied Wiccan rituals. I wanted my house clean of anything that could haunt me. I likely would have taken things with a grain of salt had I not had a terrible experience that night. It felt so real, and for a long time, at least a few weeks, I could still feel the scratches and cuts on my body. My tiny little house now has a constant smell of sage. Hillary allowed me to move it to the other end of the park with no fee. My new neighbors seem nice, and they mostly keep to themselves. Chapter 2, February 7th, 2018. Here and now. It has been a year now. A year to the day. I went to work as usual. Hillary has given me work at the diner, and I have become quite the bartender. We end most nights with the party at my tiny house, and just enough drinks to give us all a bit of a need for the hair of the dog the next day. Tonight, however, I want to be alone. I need to collect my thoughts. I guess you could say that I have been having a foreboding feeling all day, and I just don't want to party. Instead, I decided to have a nice steak dinner with a side of baked potato and some corn. No frills, but good eating all the same. The steak is juicy and tender that I hardly even need my steak knife. With every delicious bite, I savor as much of the juicy, salty flavor as I can. No A1 required for this meal. The baked potato has chives and sour cream, along with those little fake bacon bits that taste so wrong, yet so right. The corn is nothing to write home about, but I am washing it all down with a nice glass of wild turkey American honey. That is my favorite drink, to be sure. After dinner, I plan on watching an old creature feature, maybe that one about sea monsters. And then the whiskey should take hold and send me off to dreamland. Knock, 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 knock. I'm not expecting anyone. Still, I get up and go to the door. The sense of foreboding hits me hard as I reach for the knob. I hold it tight and take a sharp, deep breath. I turn the knob, and the door gives a whine as I release it from its firmly closed position. I can feel a massive amount of force and wind as the door blows open and sends me across the room. I smash into the stairs that lead up to my loft bed. I can feel the pressure in my back from the impact. Something is clearly broken and I shout out. I try to get up, but my legs refuse their command. Looking ahead of me, I see Glenn. He's followed by Mick, and then Raven. They look like ghouls. Their skin has a translucent look to it, and I make out the horrors underneath, like one of those visible models from science class. The pain surging in my lower back starts to ease off, but I'm clearly paralyzed. All three of them have smiles on their faces. Raven latches the door shut and comes up to me. She kneels in front of my face, so close I can smell her. This is not a decent smell. She grabs me by the back of the head and pulls me in for a kiss. After she lets me go, she stares into my eyes. "Happy anniversary, baby. It's been a year," she says with a smirk. Looking back, Glenn pours himself a glass of my whiskey and takes a seat. As he does so, Mick waves his hands and all of my windows start to turn black. Raven continues to speak. "Sorry about your back there. Collateral damage. Why are you here? I did nothing to you. You call our night of passion nothing. I thought I was a better lay than that. Most succubi are. Either way, you're mine now. I never did wrong by you. What have I done to deserve this? I try to move, but it's useless." Raven stands up in front of me and then turns to Mick and Glenn with a smile. As she leans her head back in my direction, she sneers. "Wolves do not tell sheep why they must eat. Same concept here. Now you have a choice. Come with me and join my little troop of playthings, or spend your life shitting in a bag. A broken back is a terrible way to live." While I look her dead in the eyes, Raven smiles and gives me another kiss that seems sincere. I reach out with my right arm and use all my energy to reach into one of my kitchen drawers, where I keep the more harmful items. I find the big can of bug spray and toss it on top of the stove, which should still be hot from cooking my dinner. It is. If I'm being honest, I know I'm going to miss my tiny house, but it does look beautiful as the flames take everything. My curtains melt away, taking the darkness supplied by Mick with them. The flames lick at the wood panels inside my home. My one small chair and table turn from lovely cherry to a charred gray. The flames crawl up my leg. I can't feel them burning, but I can see the smoke from my pants. I can see my skin starting to melt and split. Just as the flames begin to reach my thighs, I start to regain my ability to feel pain. I scream out as the three ghouls in my tiny home shrink back from the flames, trying to shield themselves. When the firefighters find my body, I hope they think it was a stupid cooking accident. I doubt they would ever fathom the reality of the situation. The end.